Hello and welcome to our podcast. I'm Dani, and today Play.com talks with Łukasz Konieczka, the Executive Director of the Mosaic LGBT Plus Young Persons Trust. If you haven't heard of it yet, they work to support, educate, and inspire young LGBT plus persons and those around them. If you're new here to this podcast, remember, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. Hi, Łukasz, and welcome.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'm eager to talk to you today and learn more about what you guys have been up to in Mosaic Trust. Let's begin, as usually we do, with a bit of history. And I know that you like history quite a lot. So guide us through what was going on that motivated the beginning, the creation of the Mosaic Trust.
We are a bit of a weird organization because we have been established for in two different ways. There's two different reincarnations of Mosaic. So Mosaic started in early 2000s as an intervention within the local authority programming. So it was part of the local authority kind of project to support educate and protect kind of lesbian, well, mainly gay and bisexual men at the time. That's how it started around sexual health. So that was where it kind of originated from. And that carried on for a couple of years. The project manager at the time wasn't me, it was someone else. And when that person left, there was a couple of changes of management. And then I came along. I came along in 2006, which is a long time ago, it feels like. And I decided that actually it shouldn't be focused on sexual health. It should be a bit more holistic than that. It should be focusing on LGBT plus community as a whole. So there was a whole kind of overhaul of what we were about and what the project was supposed to be doing. And I was managing that project for about a decade of my life until I was made redundant and the project was forced to close because of the central government cuts to the local government. The local government simply didn't have any money for it. So they told me I'm fired, and I was like, I don't think so. So I decided that we just carry on as a charity, and I started a charity in 2016 with some of the amazing volunteers we have had at the time, and that was really quite a challenging time because obviously I didn't have a job to pay my bills for about 18 months, but I just pursued and I was like, well, just it's gonna be fine. Ignorance is a bliss. I do strongly say that repeatedly because I didn't realize how much work it takes to establish a charity. And we just carried on as normal. Like it was the most weird thing about that time was we just carried on delivering services without a glitch. We just carried on. Everything was carried on as if nothing happened. But everything happened. We lost the premises, we lost well, I lost the job, we lost all the budget, there was nothing left. Basically just website and that's it. We just stole the website. Um that was about it. So I think it was quite interesting how, for which I had to pay, obviously. So I think it is quite interesting to see how different those kind of histories were and how different my life was when I was part of the local authority and a lot of things that I had to worry about. I had to worry about my salary, about my pension, about salary of other people. Everything was kind of looked after by the departments. But within charity sector, you kind of have to think about all those things and you have to put things in place and you have to have someone who does your payroll and someone who does your it's a bit it's yeah, it's a lot more work, but at the same time you get slightly more freedom because you can do things as you want to be doing, and I think that is quite powerful and I really enjoy that that I have that opportunity to be now working with 12 to 18-year-olds. And since September, we also work with 18 to 25-year-olds. So, from across London and surrounding counties. So I think it is quite interesting to be in charge of such an organization that, makes such a big difference to young person's lives.
That is beautiful to hear. And I'm actually glad that you brought this perspective of how hard it is to build up NGO, an organization like this, because it's a point that we don't always have the chance to talk here. But I feel like when you're not involved in an organization, you just don't know. You presume things. You think, oh, people are doing it just out of the goodness of their hearts, which is something that makes sense in a level. But that does not mean that it doesn't require a certain level of organization, structure, money, logistics, and a lot of thought behind it. It's not just something that you go out there on the streets and start doing something because it makes sense to you. It takes time and it consumes money. So thank you for bringing this perspective right up front. I really appreciate that. Now, moving to what's going on today, because it's always important to us to understand the context, right? And we've been doing this LGBTQ plus series for a while now, and it's always interesting how some of the challenges we see repeating from country to country, uh, but some other things appear as things that we would never guess that were happening. So with this youth that you guys are working with, what are the challenges that they are facing right now?
Oh. I don't think we have time to go into every single challenge they're facing, but I think we're kind of in this very weird period where obviously we have new government. Those of you who are listening, we just had elections in July, so I think it is quite important to recognize that I think there was definite turn on trans young people's lives and experiences, and I think that is something that we have to deal with aftermath of because basically access to healthcare, access to any kind of support services that kind of had to do with affirming young person's identity was stopped. There was kind of block on hormone blockers, which kind of stop young person's puberty developing to give them a bit of time and space to think about their gender identity and give them the space and capacity to reflect and to make those decisions, which are not easy, I'm sure. So all of this has been stopped by the previous government, and currently we hear that the current government is going to be doing the same things. I think we are dealing with a lot of repercussions of that because I think whenever the young person goes through um, kind of hearing about that on the media and kind of not necessarily knowing what the pathway is going to look like for them and they can't see the horizon, it causes havoc for their emotional well-being. So we have to deal with a lot of issues that shouldn't be there in the first place, right? Because basically there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of issues with that. And then obviously we have young persons who are sometimes order things online just to keep themselves going and take things semi-legally. So it is quite problematic on so many levels because just because we are saying, well, we are not going to provide it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Like if you think about abortion, like when the research shows quite clearly the moment you ban it, it just goes on the ground and then it's less safe. Like that's what happens with everything, right? If I'm going to say the dental care will go out of legality tomorrow, then you just go to an underground dentist who reuses their equipment on every single patient and you're going to get hepatitis. Like it's quite clear that this is what happens. Like we can pretend it's not, but we know that this kind of high morality doesn't really apply to human behavior. And I think it is quite concerning that this is the kind of narrative that we are now having. And I think that's kind of like the biggest issues that we're dealing with at the moment. But when it comes to young persons, kind of what they are navigating, I think we see more and more young persons who are struggling with intersections of their identities, either because of their faith or culture, or the combination of the two, and them being LGBT. And I think that is quite important for us to recognize that sometimes navigating those can be quite challenging for young persons and including young adults. And that's partly why we decided to start the 18 to 25 provision in September, because basically we knew for a fact that a lot of the young persons who are from global majority come out later in life, so therefore wouldn't engage with Mosaic because obviously we had a cut-off age of 18. So we felt it was quite important for us to build a structure where those young adults could engage in a safe environment, connect with one another, build relationships, build the peer networks, being supported in the process, making sure that they can benefit from the involvement of the organization in their lives. And actually, it has been extremely positive response because a lot of those young adults don't feel like the adult services are very good match for them. I think if you are 25, 26, you can navigate those because you are closer to the age range of people who actually access adult services. But if you're like 19 and 20, I think we specifically target young persons and young adults who are not going to university with this provision as well. Because if you're going to university, you're going to have LGBT plus society in your university. You might have those networks and those communities there. But if you're not going to university, you would not have that experience. So we need to make sure we're providing service for those young adults who otherwise would have not had that. So I think it is quite important to us to make sure that we are responsible for our young person's journeys and that we are able to provide support wherever it is necessary in order to make sure that the young person's lives are positively impacted by our work.
I would love to learn more about these services that you have, these programs that you offer, because when you mentioned opening this, going from 18 to 25, right, it came to my mind what a guest that we had here in the podcast saying about the new discoveries that brain development keeps going until we are 25. So in my mind makes total sense to have these groups, have the services, the support to young adults as well. But I'd like to know more about what are you guys are doing for all ages and for all these young persons that you are working with.
Yeah, so majority of the cells that we deliver are for 12 to 18-year-olds. Our provision for 18 to 25-year-olds is designed around providing space for people to connect, right? But we see it as a kind of step out service. So what we want to make sure is that we're creating this platform where people can connect with their young adults. So the sessions happen less frequently, they happen once a month, because the idea of it is that people come in, connect with each other, and then organize their time outside of the space by themselves, because they're already adults, right? They don't need me to take them to the theater, they can go on their own. Like, versus my teenagers, they need us to be there for safety and security and all the other things, right? Their parents wouldn't allow them to just go on their own to central London and do their things on their own. Like, that's just not what happens. So we need to make sure we are stepping in wherever it's needed, but also not hand-holding unnecessarily. So we're kind of making sure that we're only doing as much as needs to be done versus kind of what we could have been doing just without any thought or concern. When it comes to young person services, I think we do a lot as an organization. We're quite rich in services organization because we continuously change delivery of things. One of the things that we do, obviously, on a regular basis, we have twice a week, there's the Young Persons Club where they can come in and connect with one another, but also learn. So there's curriculum that provision runs, making sure that they learn what it means to be LGBT plus person in today's society. They learn about history, heritage, arts, culture, activism, you name it. They cover a lot of that, as well as kind of allyship with other communities. So we talk about people with disabilities, we talk about persons of color, we talk about all of that kind of stuff is being covered within that curriculum, making sure that our young persons are brought up to be respectful, understanding, kind to other representatives of other communities, as well as intersections of those identities within our own community, making sure that those things are in place. We also run fun things, because that sounded quite serious. We also run fun things, although it's quite fun. I do think so, anyway. I would have to ask my young persons, but I think they must enjoy it since they're coming in. When it comes to fun things, we do run things like events. So we actually have an event this Friday, which is our Pride Prom. So well, maybe you will not be able to hear it this Friday because we don't know when this is going to be going out. But 19th of July is our Pride Prom. Then on the 31st of August is our Queer Garden Party. So those events are designed around young persons' need to socialize in a fun environment, very much kind of focused around experiencing of queer joy. We also do run Homoween, which is like a Halloween for homos, obviously. And Homoween happens in October, needless to say, last weekend of October. So it gives the young persons the opportunity to formulate kind of friendships and relationships and also have this space where they can be joyously themselves and nobody will judge them, nobody will in any way, form, or shape try to contain them in like the box that we just want them to be happy themselves. And if they want to dress up, they dress up. If they don't want to dress up, they don't dress up. And we don't permit our young persons to be judgy or throwing shade, so they know that it's not allowed. That's kind of part of the offer. We also do run things like residential. So we run summer camp, which is happening in August, well, 29th of July, 28th of July till 4th of August. And we also do winter retreat, which is similar residential program in the winter, so in February, half term, when young persons are not in school, we're taking them away for 3 days just to enjoy and get a step away from the hustle bustle of London, and also to get them kind of rested and reset before the exam period starts in the British education system. So all of those things are kind of designed around experience of joy, but also kind of summer camps and winter retreats do have curricular activities. So there's a lot of learning that young persons undergo as well. But it's more active learning, to do more workshops and physical activities and things that are quite important to their growth and development. We also do have culture clubs, so we take our young persons to see theatres and cinemas and whatever exhibitions and screenings, whatever is queer relevant. And importantly, so I think we a very long time ago decided that this was quite a critical element of our culture. Because I think the young persons formulate a sense of self based on the cultural input. So we want to make sure that our young persons have got the broadest possible input to make sure that they have a safe and sound understanding of self. And that's exactly what this kind of organization is all about. It's about kind of formulating, giving young person space to formulate themselves and give them a sense of self and give them a sense of identity and sense of community. That's what we are here for. We do have counseling service in-house if young persons need additional kind of one-to-one support. We also offer things like mentoring, which is different to counseling entirely. Mentoring is kind of current issues, coming out relationships, parents, and counseling is got mental health and deeper past events that might have impacted you. So those kind of are quite different in their nature. We do offer all the physical activities. We have taken our young persons to do things like kayaking, boxing, rock climbing, you name it, we've done it. I think it's quite important for young persons to be physically active. We try to encourage that physical activity, especially when they are not in school. We kind of intensify that part of the programming, making sure that there's something for them to do on the daily basis when they're not in school, because otherwise they'll have that routine. But we also work with quite a lot of young persons who are homeschooled, so I think they benefit from those programs as well. We do run regular every season clothes swaps because we believe that young persons, it was kind of set up as a one-off. It was supposed to be this one place when people come in, dump their old stuff, take the new stuff and go home. But then the young persons were asking us when the next one is going to be and when it's going to be. So we decided we're just going to run one every 3 months and have it all done with. So it is taking place once every 3 months, which next one is in August. And I think it is quite important because I think it gives young persons opportunity to dispose the stuff they no longer need or want in an environmentally friendly way, but also create that sense of community of like sharing. And I think it's quite lovely how they react. They're like, oh, that was mine. And like, it's quite nice to kind of have those connections, and they're always very polite with each other. And I think that space is quite lovely to see. So we have a lot of clothes that are donated to subsidize the swap, and then young persons bring some, and they can take as many as they want. We are not very tickety. We don't do tokens, and we don't play with all of that. I think we're kind of trusting our young persons that they wouldn't necessarily take more than they need or more that they like. So I think it is quite important to have that mutual trust, kind of young persons and them having the trust in us simultaneously. So I think we do offer a kind of broad range of services that I have mentioned, and all of those things are kind of designed around young person's impact. We also do have well-being stuff, so we do run things like yoga classes, and we did gong baths and kind of all the other stuff that's kind of well-being or experimental well-being. So just kind of trying to see what works for a young person. Taking into cat cafes, you can never go wrong with cat cafe. But yes, so we do a lot of things to make sure that our young persons are well.
It looks absolute fun. Honestly, it does. And I feel like we even though you gave us many examples, I think the best way for people to really get to know more is to go to your page and maybe go to your socials and understand what's going on. And for this, even though we're going to leave the link on the description of this episode, I'm going to tell you guys here to go to mosaictrust.org.uk. In there, you can get information and get through their socials, Instagram, TikTok. I don't know if you guys are on Facebook. I haven't checked that, but people
On
can.
Facebook and Instagrams and at the Mosaic Trust.
Perfect. Go there, guys. I think it's the best way to really see what's going on. And Łukasz, I usually like to think here about what would be a good sign of that things are working, right? How the organizations measure their success? And would it be too silly of me to think that in your case is when you look at these kids and see the community being created? Because this is something that you said many times in this last answer about fostering this this culture of community, of belonging. I loved when you said it's about trusting each other. So that kind of gives me this idea of, okay, so this is their success. Does it make sense, or is too too naive on my part?
No, I think we kind of constantly have a conversation as a non-profit organization that we need to prove to our funders, we need to prove to other people that we're actually having a positive impact because, we could be having negative impact, like um but so how do we make sure that it happens and that positive impact is taking place? And I think we do see young persons growing up with us. I've been doing this job for 20 years, so I see now adults. I know it's hard to believe, but the young persons that we work with do grow up. And once they do, they actually tell us that it was impactful, that they appreciate us. And sometimes we even get random emails from people who are like, oh, I really would like to volunteer. I don't know if you remember me. I was attending between the years of whatever, whatever, and I really enjoyed my time. And I think you may change my life. And so we get those regularly, actually. Well, not regularly, not like every day or whatever, but like we do get those on occasions. And I think every time I get that, I always send it to my trustees because I always want them to see that actually the impact is there. It's evident. We make sure that it is quite clear to our members and to our stakeholders that actually we are doing a very, very positive job on our young persons. And yes, and I think it is quite important for us to recognize that how do we measure it and how do we make sure of it? So like qualitative stuff is one side of it, and we can see, and I still speak to some of my persons who are now adults and have got their careers, and some of them kids and some of them, other things, mortgages and all the other things that are signs of adulthood. Um, and I also have, I think, a lot of evidence from the surveys that they do. So we do engage our young persons in constant feedback loop. So they tell us constantly how we're doing and what they like, what they don't like, how they would like things changed. And we can see we're having an impact. Like every time we do a workshop with the young persons, they have to tell us what they knew about the topic before the workshop and what they do know now. And we are tracking that improvement. And we see that we have an improvement in their knowledge and understanding of topics we cover. So obviously, we're having an impact on those young persons because they wouldn't have otherwise spoken about things that we speak to them about because the schools don't talk to them about things that are queer to such a deep level as we do, right? So I think it is quite important for us to recognize that we take our impact very, very seriously and we look constantly to capture the difference we're making and also suggestions for things to change because we are my boss always laughed that this is not democracy, it's a Lucas's dictatorship. But I like to believe it's a benevolent one. So the young persons always tell us things and I don't think they necessarily realize how much time is spent in taking their feedback in, putting into the work plans, making sure there are resources, and then implementing those things in order to facilitate the things that need to be facilitated and things that need to happen. They only see the stage, they don't see the backstage, right? So they don't see what needs to happen in order for this to occur. They just see it like, oh, that was nice, right? That was not wrong, that was incorrect, that was that. So they can do that because you're in a seating position. And you're not necessarily seeing things behind the curtain. So I think it's quite important that we need to make sure we're communicating with young persons better in telling them how much work it goes into those things. Because I remember I've had a volunteer many years ago. I've had a volunteer who used to be a member of ours. Again, furthermore years back, because it's taken them quite a lot of time to come forth. And we were sitting in a debriefing meeting, which was an hour and a half long, and we were discussing young person's feedback. We were discussing kind of suggestions, the young person's issues, the things that they have said or hadn't said or might have indicated or whatever. And then he just turned to me and was like, I've never realized how much time you spent on like discussing all of those things that we just take a second to fill in or don't even bother to fill in properly. I'm like, we are telling you all the time we're taking those things very seriously. And sometimes we can't implement things when you're asking for things that are unrealistic or against our better judgment, because sometimes, you ask for things that are not good for you, and we know they're not good for you. Not like we have had one young person who suggested we should have energy drinks at the sessions. I'm like, well, we're not gonna. Like that's just counterintuitive. Like I just you should not be drinking them full stop, let alone us providing them to you. Do you know what I mean? Like it's there are things like this that like we know that they are not good for you. So like we're not going to do that. And your suggestions are not here to be ruled and listened without any context and without any concern. So I think there's that feedback loop, and we do listen and we do take what they say very seriously, and we do hope that we're making that clear to them. But obviously, the young persons are young persons, and sometimes they don't necessarily appreciate that it takes a longer time than they might have liked for things to be put in place. But I think generally speaking, they tell us very positive stuff about the service, and they're quite happy that we are very receptive. We give them opportunities that they would have not otherwise had. And I always like to say that my job is great because I get to spoil queer teenagers, which is exactly what I do for a living. And I always think, and my mantra is always that my young persons deserve the best. And thinking, how can I make sure that our young persons get the best possible outcome for them in the best possible services. So we always look to take things one notch higher, and kind of how we can make sure that this is even better. And sometimes they wouldn't necessarily come up with suggestions. Sometimes we have to come up with suggestions. Um, so yeah, it's quite interesting because sometimes you only see the world through your own experiences, and if you didn't have an experience, you wouldn't necessarily come forward with a suggestion, right? So when the pandemic happened, we asked young persons what they wanted, and they just told us the most unhelpful list of things that was just bizarre to say the least. They want to have house party. I'm like, well, no, this is not safe. It's not secure digitally, blah, 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 blah. But then when we suggested that we are going to buy and distribute bikes to them so that they can be independent and physically active and, and do things and go places when there was no public transport and, but they like wanted to go to a park, whatever that was feasible or possible, or we've taken them on cycling trips. That was like a very popular program that we did with them. And they would have never suggested that because sometimes you have to come forth with a suggestion or come forth with a program and see how it lands versus just waiting for them to suggest something because sometimes they wouldn't necessarily know that it was even an option. And it was an option. So I did it. Well, we did it twice actually. There was a two rounds of that program.
I am in awe here for about this environment that you are creating with the kids and how your relationship with them really goes and flourishes. I'm really touched to and moved to hear about these tales. I feel like as a queer teenager, we all need this kind of safe spaces and places and actually people that we look up to and that will help us grow. So this is a beautiful initiative that you guys have there. My final question for you today, which is about how can our listeners or everyone else watching us on YouTube can help you guys keep moving forward with this project?
Well, depends where you are, I suppose, globally. If you are in somewhere else and you're listening and you're not, I don't know, not in Europe or hopefully planet Earth, but not, I mean, like not locally to us, then it might be quite difficult for you to get involved. But we always look for volunteers. We always look for donations. If you do want to make a donation, please do. mosaictrust.org.uk/donate. And I think people sometimes don't realize that I think a lot of charities kind of do it, and I think public generally doesn't realize that the biggest impact you can make with your donation is to make it as small as you can afford, but as regular as you can do it. Because I think that allows us to plan. It actually increases your donation by default by 25% in terms of impact, because we can then make sure it's planned properly and it's spent properly, and it actually is invested in things that needs to be invested in. We can also like plan things ahead far better than with outbursts of donations, which obviously we'd welcome. Like if you're doing a fundraising or a run or whatever, we never would say, no, we don't want your £5,000. We would rather have £5 a month. But that's not the case. But I think sometimes people don't realize that. So I just wanted to make sure that that's very clear. And if you're in London and you do work for an office, we do have work experience program where our young persons are looking to have a a work experience in an office that is LGBT plus inclusive, and they can shadow an LGBT plus professional. So if you do want to be part of that program, please just get in touch with us. We have a person who manages that program. And we want to make sure that more and more young persons actually have opportunity to have meaningful work experience and have something on their CVs. I think that's really critical to us. Because we know that that impact is meaningful for the young persons, because it's quite hard for them to find a job if they've never had that experience. And the best way I've heard it described, which I absolutely love, was one of my trustees who said that we are trying to be middle-class parents to our young persons. Because if you are a middle-class parent, you're working in an office, it's very easy for you to bring your child in and and give them the work experience, inverted commas, and they can put it on their CV and whatever. And you can see it happening left, right, and center. If you are a working class parent, you might not necessarily be able to do that, or that work experience won't be as meaningful on their CV either way. So what we are trying to do is to kind of be those kind of pushy parents who are like, you can do it, like you can do those things and make sure you're achieving your goals in the long run. So this is our aspiration, is to make sure that every single LGBT plus young person have got ability to work in the job that they really want, and have meaningful employment, and be free to be themselves, because also statistics tell us that a lot of queer young persons go back into the closet when they start work because they're afraid of the retaliation of the work environment. So I think we need to be very, very mindful of that. And I think we can build that courage for them to be authentic self from day one if we have those experiences in place. So if you do want to be part of it, please do get in touch. And closed swaps are, as I have said, I briefly mentioned, that closed swaps are subsidized with donations from the public. So we do welcome donations. You can find out more on our website of how to do it. You can do an office collection and then donate what the office collected to us. We will hold on to that collection for the period of until the next kind of close swap happens. And they will never go to waste. Like if we do have some stuff left over and it's out of season on that swap, we'll hold it on until the next one. If it's something that has been around for 2 or 3 close swaps, we'll then donate it to charity shops. There is always the positive impact on both the environment, the kind of other organizations. We've made winter clothes donations to refugee charity, who provides those to people who are struggling to provide for themselves. So I think that's quite important to us, to not only look after our LGBT plus community, but also think about the global kind of social justice issues.
Thank you so much for joining us today, because this was a wonderful conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. That was so nice to speak and well, reiterate all those things that we do. We do a lot of things, but yeah, we only have like 4 members of staff, so we're quite a small organization in comparison. Yeah, it takes a lot to be delivering all those things we are delivering.
That is amazing. Honestly, I would never guess there are only 4 people behind this. So kudos to you guys, honestly.
3.5
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, and to everyone else that is watching or listening to us right now, also thank you so much for staying with us for this more episode. And remember, if you enjoyed it, press subscribe on YouTube or in a podcast app, because that shows the algorithms that this is an important conversation, and then we can spread the word about the importance of the Mosaic LGBT plus young persons trust. Check their page, check their socials, and help out if you can. Bye, guys, and I'll see you in the next episode.